FiFi was built too late in the war to see active service, but she's seen plenty of action since. As one of the world's 2 remaining flying B-29s, she undergoes stringent maintenance and updates across the winter shutdown. She's rolled out into the spring sunshine at her base in Fort Worth for the first test flight of the year, and it's also the chance for one of the senior CAF pilots to get his type approval on the aircraft.
This is my initial training flight in the B-29. It's a big airplane. It's, a lot of guys that come to fly the B-29 have, their day job is flying big airplanes, but most of my expertise, with a few exceptions, has been in little airplanes, little bitty short wing fighters like the Mustang or the Corsair or something like that. This is my first foray into 4-engine airplanes, and fly the airplane and you call for the power, so that's going to be a little bit of an interesting experience. And the B-29 is the queen of the fleet, and 140 some feet of wing. It's a little intimidating, but at the end of the day, it's an airplane, and we'll go fly it.
We're just looking to make sure that we don't have any mechanical issues. This airplane is probably one of the most looked at airplanes in the CAF. We do a intense pre-flight, post-flight, and we also do a weekly inspection on top of that. So she's a complex bird, and we just got to stay on top of her. That type of generation engine, that was basically one of the first 350s developed, and they were not very reliable. You could maybe get 200 hours service out of each engine. Now, this engines we have, which is basically a -95 series, mated with a 26 WD rear case and blower assembly. Well, we're just about to achieve 1,000 hours on these engines, and then we're hoping to eventually achieve 2,000 hours total. You're not seeing the load characteristics that they were operating during the war, of course. We really baby the engines, and the way we operate them, we're not basically using max power like they were back in the day.
Approach and use, landing and departing runway 16. Noticed airmen, multiple markings and signs on field.
Let's go ahead and start the after start checks and start. Okay, avionics switch is on. Inverters, they're on. Engine instruments, we are checked in the green. Okay, starter circuit breakers, they're off. Ladders, still on.
Yeah,
stowed in the front.
As soon as I get it stowed, I'll get the chalk and put it in the back.
Not quite yet.
Wait. Have a good flight, gentlemen.
Thank you, Rick. I can still see it hanging there. So the one in the back is hanging? Yeah, it's still on. Okay, there, that's just as a reminder. Swap it over later. Okay, 5134. Right. And not a clearance in across B. So after you take off and get everything cleared out, I'll just call them, and it'll be just turn to the east, and we'll probably go down over Arlington, and we'll stay below 2.
November 29 Bravo, runway 16, take off. Have a safe flight, Bravo. Very good.
I often wondered if I would ever get in one. I never even got in the whole plane, But anyway, this is something you dream about. I didn't think I'd ever be in one.
These were set up to end the war, to carry 20,000 pounds of bombs. And so that's what we were doing over there.
was a comfortable airplane for the most part because it was pressurized, as was not the case with any of the other bombers that we were using at the time.
Well, this is a really challenging airplane. I'm really intrigued by getting my arms around this airplane and really digging into it because it's a very challenging airplane. I'm quite frankly a little bit surprised by what a monstrous beast it is. And, it's just big and heavy and slow in terms of control forces. So I've got some learning to do before we tame this tiger. I've flown a lot of different airplanes, and I'd studied all the books and had some idea what to expect. And my instinct from all the airplanes I fly is to hold the nose up and maybe bring it up a little bit and expose the belly of the airplane to use some aerodynamic braking. Well, you just can't do that in the B-29, and if you do, and I did, there's a skid on the back of the airplane, and I just scraped a little tiny bit of paint off of it, but I touched it, so I own it, so I'm going to have to sign the tail skid. This is the first airplane in a long time that I've flown where I really had to buckle down and really pay attention and work hard to, and I by no means claim to have that airplane figured out, but that's a challenging airplane to fly. When it's up and going at speed, it's very docile. When you've got thrust on the airplane on takeoff, it flies great. But when you get that airplane slowed down, it starts to become very, very challenging, and the ailerons get real sluggish. There's a tremendous amount of adverse aileron yaw. You've got to have the airplane really right where you want it, at about 200 feet and a half a mile. You just really got to have it inside the box and stable, and then just hold your jaw just right and get it to the end of the runway with minimal inputs, because if you're down at approach speed of 135 mile an hour, 130 mile an hour, depending on your weight, and you start moving the ailerons, moving the yoke around, the airplane starts to wallow and bad things start to happen. But it's been a good, really a great experience for me to really dig in and, figure out what's going on there, understand the lead and the lag and all the control inputs, and I've really enjoyed flying that airplane this summer, the challenge of it. The airplane was so far ahead of anything that had ever been. First pressurized, big airplane, bigger airplane than anybody'd really ever successfully developed. And so from a technological perspective and a celebration of what Americans can do when they put their mind to a task, that's a great story, and the B-29 tells that story very, very well.
The United States-based Commemorative Air Force's B-29, nowadays known as FiFi, was built in 1945 for use in training roles within the United States, a fact that might explain why she, unlike so many, avoided being scrapped.
Now, of course, today the idea of blowing up an old bomber is a totally abhorrent thing to people like me that love airplanes, but that's how you develop weapons. That's how you test weapons, and You make improvements on existing weapon systems that way, and you test new technology that way. So what they were doing was they would take these B-29s, drag them out onto the range, and they would pressurize them on the ground because it was, the first American pressurized military aircraft. They'd pressurize these airplanes, and then you'd shoot them with different size projectiles and different types of projectiles. Well, you would see what the resulting damage was, and with that, you would design new weapons, you would design new defenses against these kind of weapons. So that's what these B-29s were for. Unlike the B-17 and to the B-24 to an extent, the B-29 had no post-war civilian use. They didn't use them for executive transports or anything. They just weren't set up for it, and they were just so expensive to operate. And truly, they were not that reliable of an airplane, even that late in their career. So, they were blowing them up in weapons tests. 1963, the CAF started looking beyond fighters, which is what they actually had at the time. Mostly was fighters, and then someone came along with a B-25, and then they found a B-26. The next thing you know, in 1967, we got Diamond Lil, our B-24, and CF said, we collecting bombers now, a B-29 would be kind of neat to find. And Vic Agather said, I'll do it. I'll find you one. I'll be the one to go find, you go locate an airplane. So he did. Starting in 1963, they started looking for B-29s. In 1966 is when they really got serious at looking for them.
At the end of the war, I must say that I never wanted to see a B-29 again. I swore to God on VJ Day I would never set foot in a B-29 again. But time gets the best of you. I could never get the B-29 out of my mind. I still can't to this day.
They went back to China Lake and they started calling around to the Air Force and the Navy, and they kept saying, we don't have any B-29s.
I was in there with a group of airplanes that basically forgotten. They didn't seem to have an inventory list on it anywhere, and so when the CAF was looking for one, there seemed to be none to be had anywhere. And then somebody happened to spot them, happened to fly overhead, spot the airplanes, and with that they did a deeper search, and in fact they found this airplane on inventory. And so the Air Force then donated to the Commemorative Air Force.
What happened was they gave us 2 B-29s. They said, take 2 complete airplanes and all the parts you can carry away. We don't care, the rest of them are gonna get destroyed anyway. Said, we can't afford to take 2 airplanes, we're gonna take just 1. Roger went out there and he started digging through all the airplanes, looking through them and everything. And he narrowed it down to 5 airplanes that were in the best shape. And then he narrowed it down into 3 airplanes and kind of just said, well, one of these is going to come to CF's airplane. And so they finally narrowed it down to the one that became FiFi. And the reason they chose this particular airplane was it had the most intact glass. Well, they quickly found out that this was going to be a bigger job than they had anticipated. So they hired a guy named Jack Kern, who was there in Tucson, Arizona, and he had a business pulling airplanes out of the boneyard and putting them back together and getting them in flight. So Jack had experience doing this. Well, those airplanes were preserved and in decent shape. This one wasn't preserved. I mean, the windows were swinging in the wind and stuff like that. Well, Jack had had involvement with B-29s during the war, so he knew the airplane. They drug it up onto a hard stand, cleaned it out the best they could, and then started putting it together. And it took, time-wise, it only took 9 weeks of work to get the airplane finished. They got out there early in the morning and cranked the airplane up, took off, circled the base once, kind of as a salute to the Navy, and there was a Baron chase plane, I believe it was. I think it was a Baron. It was the Navy sent up a chase plane to kind of, catch the airplane and see how it was doing and all that. Well, the B-29 quickly outran it, and it became literally a chase plane. The B-17, everybody loves B-17s, and it's a gorgeous airplane. Anybody who says the B-17 is not beautiful is lying to you. They're beautiful airplanes. They're known as the Queen of the Sky. The CAF always called FiFi the Queen of the Fleet. And when I was a little kid, I'm like, well, that's kind of rude to the B-17, the Queen of the Sky, But now that I've been involved with the airplane all this time, and she is the Queen of the Fleet and the Queen of the Skies as far as I'm concerned.